Hello everyone. Today we're gonna be working on the first custom thing on this truck. It's gonna be the front bumper reinforcement slash hitch mount. Right here in the middle where the license plate is, there is going to be a 2-inch square tube. It's basically a hitch for the front, and that'll allow me to install a winch and remove it when needed. So it's going to be a removable winch. I already have the winch. I use it currently on my 4Runner. I want to be able to use it here as well if I need to. So I'm gonna just remove the plastic bumper cover and see what I can do to make this happen. So I have removed the bumper cover, plastic, and I see that it already has a pretty strong bumper. Now I need to just find a way to make that square tube into it so that it works. I will take some measurements and figure it out. All right, so I have an idea here. We're gonna have a bar connecting the two frame rails right behind this bumper rebar, and we're gonna have a square tube going through the bumper rebar and welded to that bar. So the bar will be welded to each of the frame rails and then welded to that square tube for the actual hitch receiver. And that'll be a very nice reinforcement for all of this. I have finally found what we're gonna be using for the bar that goes across from one frame rail to another. I just found an old hitch sitting around in the shop, and that bar looks perfect for that. So I'm just gonna cut it off from the mounting on each end, the correct length, and I'll be using it to put behind this bumper rebar. So basically right here will be a hole in the middle going through for that hitch, front hitch receiver. And that's it. And all of that will be welded to the frame rails and to that front rebar. That'll reinforce it greatly, and I'll be able to use it to pull myself out of anything. I have made these lines here. It's gonna be cut out completely. This is the middle here. This is where I'm gonna cut so that a square tube like this will fit, and it'll stick out some, and it'll be welded behind here to this reinforcement bar. Also, it will be welded to the original rebar that's here. This rebar is part of the whole frame, one whole thing assembly. It's not removable, so I can't really remove it and make another one. I will rather just reinforce it with what I can. This is already prefabricated to receive this square tube, like so. The square tube will be right here. One part of it will be cut off at the bottom. Actually, we should cut it off first before grinding. We will cut off a big chunk. So we gotta cut out this top section in order for this big square tube to slide over. Like this lower piece of the square tube will stay, and it will just cover up to the end of this tube, and then it's gonna be welded together. All right, so we have outlined it. We need to cut out this piece, this whole thing. I'm gonna go do a bandsaw cut because it's just a long cut, don't need to use grinder for that. And for these two, I can use grinder later on. Now the rest we will cut with grinder. There you go. Okay. So that piece is not needed. Let's go measure it up. See how it fits over it. How it fits. Oh, I think it fits almost perfect. Yeah, it is still level. It is perfect. Okay. There is one more preparation that I gotta do before I start welding it together. It's this seam from the weld where when they make the square tube, they join the two ends of the sheet. Right here, this is the seam, and that's a weld. I gotta grind off this weld along the whole tube in order to be able to fit in the other square tube that's gonna go inside. Yeah. So I have this nice little tool. It's a little die grinder. It'll fit exactly into that tube. It'll fit about halfway, and then halfway from the other side. That's the best idea I have. So let's get to it. I have ground the whole seam. The whole seam has been cleaned, but This pipe here is like really snug, really tight. This tube. So I'm gonna have to make some slack, because without slack I will not be able to put it in and remove all the time. I have just realized that I don't really need to grind the whole inside of this, because the standard Hitch ball with a bar fits right in. So what I need to do is modify this tube on the outside, which is very easy, and I can already see where these on all the sides, these are very sharp, these turns. So I'm just gonna smoothen them out and it's gonna go in easy. So let's give that a shot. I milled this hole exactly 5/8 of an inch. It fits very snug, and it's exactly in the center. I've checked on my winch, that's already got the holes, but it's like really hard to insert. It's tough, especially when the winch is also there. So I've cleaned up the circumference. Now I'm gonna enlarge it slightly with a Dremel. Yeah, this feels plenty. Other side now. This should be enough. Now I'm gonna weld this nut to the bottom of the back side. Actually, it'll have to be the front. Yeah, it'll have to be the front. I'll weld it right here so that I can jam whatever is in here, so that it doesn't wobble, doesn't make any noise. Now I'm gonna weld this little collar around the actual Hitch receiver. That's done in order to make this outer edge harder and avoid expanding it, I guess, deforming in any way. So that's just how it's done. If you look at any of the Hitch receivers on any vehicle, you'll see exactly the same thing. I have positioned the receiver where it's gonna live. Nothing is welded yet. I'm just doing the aiming. Everything has just been positioned. So this is how it's going to be welded together. Also, it'll be welded to the frame rails on each side, and it'll be welded to the factory rebar, which is also part of the whole frame. Right now, just aiming it with a laser to make sure it's going straight. It's facing straight forward. The laser is shooting at the wall. I'm not sure if it's going to be visible. It's pretty bright inside, but I can see it. So this whole structure has been assembled and clamped with C-clamps. Now I'm gonna tack weld the bar, this bar to the receiver, and then I'm gonna remove the assembly and then thoroughly weld it, and then put it back and then weld it to the car. Now I will remove this whole structure and weld it on the table, and then put it back in and weld it to the vehicle, and that's it. You will only have to paint it after. All right, this part is done. Moving on to installing it. So the receiver is in place. Now I have to tack it in multiple places, and then I can remove the C-clamps and finish the welds. project is finally finished. Now I'm going to paint this whole thing. Everything that was welded or new pieces, everything must be painted. I'm gonna use Tremclad rust paint. It's my favorite paint. It's oil-based and it just outperforms any paint I have tried. Now, the last thing we need to do is put the bumper cover on to see where this hits and then cut it out. So with a marker, I'm gonna mark where that receiver is hitting the bumper and then we'll just cut it out. So now we got this square here that we need to cut out, but we also need some space for the pin to be able to insert the pin. Yeah, I'll just do all the way like the license plate was, because we're gonna have license plate anyway, and this is gonna be very convenient to cut, to open and remove the pin. Yeah, small piece of wood. That should be good for yeah. Now I cut. It goes well, but I'm gonna lubricate the knife. It'll probably go much better.
think this upper section is harder than the lower section. It's just thicker. Hey, like, so when you
All right, done. All right. So. Right on. Isn't that sweet? Oh, yes, it is.
what I need. Yes. All right. Nice.
That's it. That's it for today. I will continue building the license plate holder next time, whenever that comes. So, yeah, turning out pretty good.